Welcome, everyone, to the Contact Center Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. We have a very special guest on today, Neelam Sandhu. And Neelam not only is an enterprise expert in SaaS, all things go-to-market, from marketing to customer success, sales. In fact, we want to talk about today to all CX leaders how to help sales close larger deals. And you actually have a perspective on this, a very clear point of view, and working with 8-figure deals, working with multi-year deals in the enterprise space, that not only should sales change, but there should be a hyper focus on the customer as the center of all of this. That might not be a bad place to start, but if you wouldn't mind first just expanding a little bit on your background, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Sure. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Steve. So as you mentioned, I'm a go-to-market executive. I've run customer success and sales teams, as well as corporate marketing and even sustainability. So a whole host of different functions at the executive level and in the technology space.
So tell us then a little bit more about this point of view that you have, how sales needs to change. The focus has to be hyper-focused for the enterprise on customers and their success. Tell us a little bit about that to start us off.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. We've seen over, I would say, the last maybe 3 or 4 years with the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the maturing of the SaaS market. Companies in the SaaS space have actually started to reduce the size of their customer success teams. And I would argue for the opposite. I think there needs to be a greater investment in customer success teams. And we've talked a little bit before offline, Steve, around what the team should be called. You could call them customer success, you can call them customer experience, even still refer to them as sales, but it really is about investing in those teams that are hyper-focused on the customer. And the rest of the business should really revolve around those teams and ensuring that customer is successful and the customer is very engaged and very happy with the company. As I said, as the market's matured and the market's also right-sizing post-pandemic, customers are more thoughtful about how they're spending their money. And they also have a lot more choice in the market. There's so many technology vendors out there. I think we'll probably all seen those maps of technology vendors in various sectors of the technology space. And they're so full that you have to squint to make out the logos on the page. So as customers have more choice, customers are a lot more thoughtful and strategic about how they're spending their money. It's no longer just a purchase decision for them, in my opinion. It's really an investment for them. They're making a business investment in the technology that they're acquiring or buying. And equally, the technology company that's partnering with the technology provider needs to be making an investment in the customer. So the companies need to be hyper-focused on the customer. And I think the business results speak for themselves, in my experience.
I love that word investment, because if the customer feels like you're vested or you're making an investment in their success, that goes beyond the technology. It goes beyond product features, that goes beyond quality, that goes beyond your focus on what they need to get done. And I've had the benefit of talking to all kinds of C-suite individuals, chief customer officers, chief experience officers. And the one thing that they always want to know, they want the insights that are coming directly from the customer, directly into every different department inside of the company, and informing decision-making at the highest level. That's what I kept thinking about as you're talking here. And so I would love to have you talk about your unique brand of being a CX team that is a consultant to the rest of the company, and how you think about that and how important that is at the bottom line.
Absolutely. And I'll answer this question in 2 parts. First, I'll just touch on something that you mentioned around features. So customers have so much choice in the market around the technology solutions that they adopt. And for the most part, I think that obviously they're looking for a product that works and meets their core needs. But from a feature perspective, I would say features matter, absolutely. But every product has something that's unique, and every product is missing something. So generally customers are making a decision where there's some sort of a trade-off. And also, as I mentioned, there's a lot of choice. So features are only one part of their decision these days. I would say that the relationship that they have and the trust that they have with the vendor or the technology provider is also very important in their purchase decision. And that's again where customer success comes in. Building a relationship where the customer feels that they're important, no matter what size the customer, that could be a large enterprise, a 5-person company. Every customer needs to feel important because they are important. They need to feel like they can reach their customer success manager or an executive within the company if they have some sort of an emergency, or if there's something they urgently need to speak with their partner about. They need to feel like they can reach that individual immediately just by picking up the phone. So relationship is very important, and that builds loyalty. And features are relevant, but it's one part of the equation. And so then coming back to features, as you build a relationship with a customer that's anchored around customer success. And one of the things that I did as I built out my customer success team was really focus on hiring talent that was very technically astute. So they had a background in product development or sales engineering, for example, but also that business mind could translate the relationship with the customer into a sale, but more organically, as opposed to pushing a 50-slide PowerPoint deck about a product onto a customer and asking for the PO the next day. Building a technology consultant type of relationship with the customer where you understand their strategy. You understand their strategy beyond just the products that you could offer them, but understand their objectives end to end. And then you can pepper in the solutions that you have as a company into the conversation to help them achieve their objectives. And it feels like a much more organic relationship, as the customer doesn't feel like you're pushing product on them, but you're helping them achieve their objectives. And then vice versa, with the main point of contact into the customer being someone who's very technically astute and understands the customer strategy very well. When you're feeding that information back into your colleagues in your company in different functions, could be product, for example, the product development team, because you understand technology and you can also understand the customer very well. I'll give you one example in terms of feature enhancement requests. So customers often throw out feature enhancement requests, and generally on quite a regular basis. They have an idea that pops into their mind. They'll send an email and it'll pop it into a form on a portal. Normally, a sales team would just pass all of those requests through to the product team. The product team is inundated with thousands and thousands of requests from different customers. As I said, every customer needs to feel like they're important. So if their feature requests are not getting a rapid response, they begin to get frustrated, especially over an extended period of time. But at the same time, the product team has thousands of feature requests to even just to filter through, let alone deliver on. And it's not a scalable model. So what I found was building a customer success team that was very technically astute. They could partner with the customer to really understand what the customer needs. If they were asking for something, to work with the customer to determine if that request was really needed or if there was a different way to deliver on it, or if they even really needed that feature. And then if they did, first of all, the list of features would be drastically reduced from, I think, 100 down to maybe even 5 key features. And then really understanding the ins and outs of those feature requests before then passing them on to the product team. And when you do pass one, you have enough detail in the request for the product team to understand the request, and then they would respond to it more quickly. And it would be much more of a partnership as opposed to the product team feeling overwhelmed really with the constant stream of requests coming into them. And they would get excited as well about delivering on new features then when they could understand the need for it, understand the details of it, and we would bring them into the conversation with the customer so they felt like they were getting customer face time too, and helping to deliver on a renewal or a happy customer. So it brings the whole equation together. Everyone feels like one team, the product team, the customer success team, and the customer as well.
You know, what's amazing is just what a much better use of resources internally. What a much better way to work with the customers so that all of them feel like their requests, you're consulting with them before you ever come back and you reflect this into the company to make sure that you're not just passing through, but you're helping them establish what the priorities are so they do feel heard. And those are the priorities that product team is now going to be working on. They're happier, the customer's happier, and ultimately you're meeting their need and you're making the product better. And that's a competitive advantage in the marketplace as well. But one of the areas that you touched on first there was that you said as you're working with the customer and their success, it allows you to pepper in what you do and what the product is and how you could help them. That doesn't mean that you're starting from the point of view of the world is our product. So this is how we're going to help you. You're starting from the perspective of what do you need to do to be successful? And if there's a way that we can help you, we will pepper that in. But that's not the only way. So what is that balance? Because we hear all the time from a company in total, we need to be focused on the success of our customers. But then we turn around and that success is basically what we have to sell. What's the balance there?
It's a great point. I would always tell customers that I'm not going to claim to be able to solve all of your problems or all of your needs, because that would not be true. But I can certainly make your life easier and help you along the path to progressing on your objectives and be a partner to you. And I think there are companies who say they can solve all the problems out there in the world for a CIO or a CISO, but it isn't true. So being, I think, transparent with a customer, number one, is important. And secondly, achieving that balance is actually very natural when you have a team that is interfacing with a customer that understands technology, because then they can have a conversation with the customer, the team that's actually going to be using the technology, in a way that is much more fluent in the language that the customer is speaking. So it's more of a conversation like you and I are having, or like a CIO would have with their CTO, for example, or technology colleague or technology peer. So it's much more of an organic conversation. And the customer is actually feeding you more information as well. So you can understand what the gaps are in their portfolio or in how they are operating their technologies. So you're getting more information from the customer, but it's much more organic as opposed to having to extract the information from the customer, when they actually do often shut down when they feel like you're trying to extract information from them, or you're going to have a conversation with them that's more helpful to you as opposed to them. And they're so busy, especially tech teams today. Everybody's swamped with security threats, with technology issues, with so many technology solutions to manage. Everyone's very busy. They don't have time for a conversation to just give you information. You want to make the conversation feel like it's helping them, but it's also helping you do your job. And then when you understand tech, then, as I said, bring in at the right time and for the right reasons your solutions, or even sometimes suggest non-competitive other solutions that you might be aware of in the market. So as I said, really act as a consultant and a partner to the customer. And my team found was that we were not having to chase customers to set up meetings with them or have to make too much effort to get a meeting in the books with a customer. They were actually calling us. Some of our top customers, they were calling us every day, sometimes even on the weekends, but every day without time schedule, they would just pick up the phone and call because they wanted to bounce some ideas off of us. So we had very high engagement from many of our customers that we were responsible for. And over time, that translated into multi-year 8-figure deals, which we weren't really seeing in other parts of the company. So the proof was putting in the deals and the customers calling us to bounce ideas off of us.
This is what you meant up front when we talked about how sales needs to change. You were not seen as a salesperson. You were seen as that expert, that consultant, that trusted advisor that actually cared. Like you built the trust that the conversations that you're going to have with them, a conversation shouldn't feel like it just benefits you. It has to be focused on them. And if they get that over time, you build that trust. But you have to be that expert in their business. And that's the difference. We become experts in our own babies, our own tech. I'm a SaaS founder myself. It's very easy to get into the kind of mindset, as long as they just know this is what we can do for them. Look at this. Nobody else does this. This is incredible. You have to first prove that you're focused on their success. That's what I'm taking away from here.
Yeah, exactly. The customer has to feel like you care about them and like they are getting value out of having a conversation with you. and it's worthwhile of their very limited time. And honestly, we actually did care as a team. We really genuinely cared about our customers, and we cared about our own business too. And we were able to translate that into success for both sides, because customer success is business success.
Absolutely. So this goes into another area that we want to cover in terms of what you're talking about there as a competitive advantage for the company. And there's all kinds of studies from the Deloittes, the McKinseys, the Gartners, the Forresters. They're all talking about how CX is the new competitive advantage, that you can't just compete on product, you can't compete just on quality. But in order to do that, what you're doing is you created an entire new benefit solution for the client. You haven't given lip service to actually understanding, supporting, and consulting with the client. You made a regular practice out of it. I almost think of you as like the internal McKinsey. So for everyone that's listening here, tell us a little bit about the hard work that it takes to do that. You're actually creating something that sets the table, the setting in order to sell. You talked about getting 8-figure deals, multi-year deals that the company wasn't ever getting before. So if we're hearing this as other CX leaders, other support leaders, customer support leaders, or success leaders, how does one go about doing that? Because it doesn't just happen by accident.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't happen by accident. And the team that I was running was definitely set up differently in the company, and it was a experiment at first. And as it did well, it was growing. And I built the team from scratch and built the team with a lot of technical expertise. That was really the number one priority for me as I was building the team. If you hire technical experts, you can train them and mentor them on the business and commercial acumen, but the vice versa is very hard to do. So I hired people with 10, 15, 20 years of technical experience to be the customer success managers, customer success senior managers, the different levels that they were at, and be the key interface with the customer. And then their relationship with the customer became the anchor point that everything else in the business related to that customer revolved around. So number one, and I can't emphasize enough, is having a team with enough technical expertise. And many of them have that ability to bring in the commercial aspects into a conversation. But if they don't, you can easily mentor them on that. And building a team that genuinely cares about the company, but also genuinely cares about the success of the customer, and being customer obsessed. I'm sure that phrase has been maybe a little bit cliche, that's been thrown around a little bit in the market, but genuinely being customer obsessed. If the customer's calling you while you're busy with something else, could be in the evening or the weekend, you pick up the phone to them, and you want to pick up the phone to them because you are genuinely interested in making sure that they're successful, so that your company is successful, to having a really high amount of engagement with them. And that engagement can be in different ways. As I mentioned, called face-to-face meetings are really important. I know the number of face-to-face meetings has declined and maybe is starting to increase again over the last couple of years. But face-to-face meetings, can't emphasize enough how those are important on a periodic basis. I wouldn't say that needs to be the norm, but definitely on a periodic basis. And then having engagement through other channels as well. So from a marketing perspective, having very personalized account-based marketing. AI plays a role in that, but knowing your customer inside out is also key to delivering strong account-based marketing that the customer actually wants to engage with and feels is relevant to them, and rather than just constantly pushing out every single email to them. And using the customer success manager as a resource in functions across the company. So understanding that they are the expert on the customer, they know the customer inside out, and using them as a resource before reaching out to the customer in many cases, whether it's the marketing team or the product team or another team in the company, having that collaboration across groups so that when you do reach out to the customer, they're not having to re-explain something to you, or they don't feel like that you're reaching out to them with something that isn't as relevant to them or isn't as detailed in terms of how molded it is for them is really important. But just building that team that's customer obsessed, has the right culture in terms of being customer obsessed and being a good collaborator with other teams, and focused on making the business successful and really having that technical expertise.
And a lot of what you said there, one of our previous conversations that we had, you talked about three different levels. We talked about level one is traditional agents that are interfacing with customers on a regular basis. Level two was a new higher quality agent, especially as AI is taking a lot of easy customer questions these days and funneling them. You have to have higher quality agents that understand their clients and that technical expertise, as one example. And then the level three was this internal consulting group. But tell us a little bit about what you meant by higher quality agents. Is a lot of what you just talked about there apply to the higher quality agents, or is that a different level of support for the customer that you're talking about?
So, at least from my experience in the model that I think works well, having a customer support team that augments the customer relationship is important in addition to customer success. But customer support needs to work tightly with the customer success team to make sure that both sides are aware of any customer escalations, who those issues are impacting. So if it's impacting an executive, for example, at the customer, then making the right teams internally aware of that, as that has a different impact on all of the teams on the customer side than it would if it was not impacting an executive. So having a customer support team that is tightly interlocked with customer success is important. Secondly, you mentioned AI. I would say AI certainly plays a role today in supporting customer support teams. You mentioned the easier types of questions, being able to answer those for a customer so that they're able to type something into a self-service portal and get the answer within a second rather than having to make a call, but not at the expense of the human interaction with the customer. So I've experienced this in some of my consumer interactions. You type something into an AI bot, you start to go around in circles. You quickly want to be able to reach a human instead. So making it easy for the customer to reach a human is certainly important. So customer support teams remain relevant. And the other difference, I would say, in my way of thinking, I know a lot of customer support teams are focused on reducing average handle time and reducing the number of tickets with a customer. But I used to track a metric which had a number of components to it that I would call customer stickiness. And one of the things that I would look at is how many tickets is a customer raising over a period of time. And if the number of tickets is actually dramatically declining or generally low, I would actually see that as a red flag. I don't think that's a good thing. And I know that means the support team costs are reduced, but it means the customer's less engaged. They're less engaged with your product because if they're finding less issues with it, they're less engaged with it. If they're asking less questions about it, they're less engaged with it. So that for me is actually a red flag. And oftentimes I did see that translating to renewal risk. So that's one thing that I would say is slightly different from a customer support perspective. And also the average handle time for a ticket. If it's 1 minute or 5 minutes or an hour, that's probably something that could be handled by an AI agent. It's the more intricate issues that the customer needs space time with you and that might take a little bit longer to address. But as long as you're highly engaged with the customer on those issues, both on the support side and the customer success side, so that they feel like they're getting the right level of attention, that really is key. The only time I would think a long average handle time is a red flag, if it's going on for a period of days, that would be normally I would watch out for.
That's one of the things that I think is just the most important thing for any company. And you have a very unique point of view on it is the highest authority in any company is the customer. And if you are not regularly involved in conversations and you rely on what I call familiarity, right? Because all companies, we're in meetings all day long talking about the customer, talking about what product, what feature, how do we sell, how do we get them into the pipeline, right? We talk about the customer so often that we think we know the customer. And as soon as we think we know the customer is the moment we start to slide.
Yeah, 100%.
So
Exactly.
that's what I love. I love looking at customer support as an opportunity just to be in conversation, right? And that's a very different conversation than what sales has. The conversation sales has a shield that's up in the middle of the conversation because I'm being sold to. I'm not being helped. Traditionally, that's when you said that traditional sales has to change. I think that's what you meant anyways, right? You can't just sell, you have to support. And if you do that, then you are selling, right? They're going to buy from somebody that they trust as an expert. And guess what? Experts make better products too.
That is 100% true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just changes the game and it makes the sale so seamless. You don't have to fight with procurement. There's none of that because the CIO has said, or the CIO's team has said they need this, procurement process it, and it just becomes an administrative step as opposed to a contract negotiation. It totally changes the game. And you get bigger deals, you get multi-year deals. The customer, as I said, was calling us every day as opposed to us having to try and get time with the calendar. It totally shifts the conversation.
Everybody's very aware inside of the company up to the board level, the importance of the product itself. What you've created is a service, but if you could productize it, right? It is equally, if not more important than the product itself in terms of the success of the company.
Maybe you trust professional services model where you say, if you want a customer success manager, you pay X amount a year, but you get just a wildly different relationship with the company.
I don't know how many people would want to pay for that up front, but they'll benefit from it and the company will benefit from those 8-figure deals, multi-year deals, right? It's that investment. Don't ask your customers and prospects to pay for that. Deliver it and you'll reap those rewards.
Yes, like the individuals on my team, like the general productivity per salesperson in the company, I think was 200 or 300,000 per salesperson. If you averaged it out across sales team, the productivity per person on my team, I think we were at 21 million per person a year.
Oh,
So it's wildly different. Let's say 300K at the higher end of that range that I mentioned. 300K per salesperson versus 21 million per person on my team.
you were able to track that to direct new revenue gained. That's night and day difference.
And even if the gap is smaller, it still just goes to show that customer success, you just build a totally different relationship with the customer. It's a whole different way of running a business, and the results of the world are different too.
We talked up front that there's probably more than one podcast we could do here, and we've covered a lot of territory already, but I want to ask you one final question. And that is, if there was just one thing that you wanted the audience to take away from everything that we've talked about here today, what would that one thing be?
Is that customers more and more nowadays, when they're making a purchase decision, it's a business investment for them. We see so many companies in different industries now calling themselves technology companies. The banking industry, for example, they're referring to themselves as technology companies more and more, and they're investing billions of dollars in technology. So for most companies nowadays, spending on technology is a investment decision, not just a purchase decision. So equally, the technology providers need to be investing in their customers as opposed to scaling back their customer success teams. They should be investing in them, evolving them to be much more of the core of the company and being responsible for an engaged customer. And an engaged customer translates to a higher revenue number as well. So being responsible for engagement and for revenue.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this wisdom. If there were follow-up questions that people had, would it be appropriate to maybe give them a link to your LinkedIn profile so they could get a hold of you?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Love to hear from the audience.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming on and sharing everything that you did. I know there will be questions coming, so thank you very much.
Thanks very much. It's great to speak with you.